why not just tear the gates down completely? Just obliterate them.
I am so excited about this week's episode. This episode, we are sitting down and talking with John Strand from Blackhills Information Security. John is a cybersecurity industry thought leader, awesome practitioner, and he is doing so much work through Blackhills, who is not just a professional services company, but also a massive amount of public community outreach on helping anyone that wants to get a job in cybersecurity get the knowledge that they need. Coming up. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. John Strand is one of the, in my mind, top current thought leaders in the cybersecurity space. He is a practitioner. He has tons and tons of practical experience both on the red side and understanding how to defend from the blue side. He has founded and runs Blackhills Information Security, which is out in the Badlands of South Dakota. You may have heard of his conference, Wild West Hackin' Fest, which was originally in Deadwood. Now they've expanded and they have big plans, which John is going to be getting into. And Blackhills Information Security has such an amazing regular public outreach where they offer free trainings or pay what you can trainings and education and curriculum. They put out free tools. So all the work they're doing is just amazing and just setting such a high bar for what it's like to contribute to the cybersecurity community. And he's just a wonderful person too. So if you're new here and you didn't know about this, this is Simply Cyber, the YouTube channel designed to help you make and take a cybersecurity career further, faster. And on this channel, we do labs and hands-on activity, and sometimes we interview industry experts just like John. So if this type of material is interesting and valuable to you, we publish every Monday. Hit the subscribe button. You hit the bell, you'll be made aware when I publish. We do live streams occasionally, so come join our community and be part of this awesome experience. All right, so let's get into the interview with John. Feel free to check out the chapters below in the show description, which is the different questions I asked him, and let's just have a good time. Let's go. A lot of the people who are watching Simply Cyber are trying to learn how to break into cybersecurity, and everyone's got their own, origin story, if you will. So could you just share with us how you broke into cybersecurity?
So it was kind of weird. I was working at the Department of Interior on help desk, and this is way back in 2000 timeframe. And the Department of Interior was in the middle of the world's largest class action lawsuit, Cobell versus the Department of Interior. And it had to do with misappropriation of Native American funds and whether or not those were being adequately protected and cared for. The answer is they weren't, but that's a whole nother conversation. And they hired a pen testing firm. Or a group to do pen testing. The judge in that case, Judge Lampert, hired a pen testing group. And the pen testing group was able to break into a bunch of critical systems. And one of the systems that my group at Accenture was monitoring was watching it. And we noticed that there was some instabilities happening with it. And we were looking at we're kicking out varlog messages, and we noticed that there was a format string exploit that was going against it. It was the RPC stat D vulnerability. And I was one of the people that was there kind of working it through. And then, based on that and what I was doing on help desk and my interest and the fact that I'd done some exploit writing in the past and things like that, I got picked up on the security team. Now, come to find out, 8-9 years after that whole entire thing found out that one of the pen testers that was involved in that particular security assessment was just possibly, Ed Scotus, who was another SANS instructor, who eventually I took over SANS 504. He'll never admit it, by the way, ever. He won't, at all. It's I can neither confirm nor deny. But I had one of our common friends be like, yeah, Ed was the guy that did that. So really, if you're looking at my career, Ed Scotus got me into computer security because he broke into a system and I was able to find it. And then he got me kind of into the SANS Institute as I was doing interviews to become an instructor. So I owe quite a bit to him and what he did for me to get me in.
John, you do a lot of work for the community, and Blackhills Information Security is kind of your not kind of your company, it's your company, and you do all sorts of red team and blue team and advising and stuff like that. One of the questions that I like to ask people, much like yourself, is you guys have so many clients, 3-letter agencies, like international, different verticals, etc. What's the most common gap that it's kind of a two-parter. What's the most common gap you see? And if you could make, just one recommendation for a control for like all orgs, where it's like great risk reduction, just for implementing this one thing, and it could be done tomorrow, what
Yeah.
would you recommend for that? So two-parter.
So I would honestly say the gap and the control are the same, right? And that's passwords. If you're looking at the largest gap that exists in organizations, it's really we break in through spear phishing and intercepting passwords, two-factor authentications. That's just kind of the bread and butter, right? And if I could have organizations wave a magic wand, it would be, hey, how about we just ignore the PCI DSS standards that say that 7 characters is an acceptable password length and not do that. And really try to get our passwords to get to the point where we're like, 12 to 15 characters, upper, lowercase, alphanumeric, special character, but let people use dictionary words. So they're using pass phrases, get them into long passwords, and then turn on two-factor authentication with that. And a huge percentage of the breaches and the vulnerabilities that we deal with would go away, just because honestly, so much of pen testing today is spear phishing for credentials, getting cloud access and pivoting. And I hate to say it's an easy fix because someone's going to flame me, but those people are wrong. So I'm going to say it anyway. It's an easy fix, right? Politically, it has some like difficulty up front. You're going to have people that, gnash their teeth and bemoan their youth and, manhood or whatever. But honestly, just do that, right? And implement that type of strong authentication mechanism across the enterprise would stop so many of the attacks that are out there. But if you don't, that's awesome. That's great. That's keeping BHIS employed, and we really appreciate that as a jobs program.
Yeah, well, passwords are important, and especially as attackers, focus their efforts on end users instead of trying to smash through technology. But so to the password, I mean, there's been a lot of, rhetoric, if you will. Like NIST came out a few years ago and said passwords aren't really important or not the way. Microsoft, or changing passwords, excuse me. Microsoft just came out last week and made the same comment about not forcing people to change passwords. So I guess, what are your thoughts on that, since we're talking passwords?
I think it depends on the complexity, right? So if you go back to the NIST Green Book, if you just Google NIST Green Book, it'll take you to a document that was written back in 1985. And basically in there, it said that 8-character passwords and, quote unquote, strong passwords, 8 characters, you needed to change those roughly every 3 months. That's basically cutting the amount of time it would take to crack those passwords in half. So everyone just did it 3-month increments. And we got into the habit of continuing to do that, right? Like changing our passwords. And it was because at the time, that's when how much time it would take the Russians to crack every possible password in 1985. Well, if the same logic was applied today, you'd be changing your password every half a second. Based on the performance computing. So a lot of organizations are keeping up their password complexity requirements that were rooted in 1985. So if you start moving your password to like a 15, 16, 17 character password, it's now going to take towards the heat death of the universe to crack that particular password, even with GPUs and Hashcat and rainbow tables and all that stuff. And once you start getting into those really long passwords, into passphrases, it just takes a really long time. So if you're ever talking to somebody and they're like, well, you can have a short password and have it be strong, stop listening to them. They're not your friend. They don't know what they're talking about whatsoever. The only thing that matters in passwords is length. But I recommend upper, lowercase, alphanumeric, special character, but let people use dictionary words and set them to about 17 characters. And then if you can couple that with two-factor, that's awesome. Then you don't need to be in a situation of changing them every 30 days or 60 days or whatever. Microsoft wants you to re-authenticate by default every 14 days. Kick that up to like 120, because it's not going to be someone that your attack vector is no longer someone cracking a password and coming in. There's other ways, of course, but at that particular point, that's really shut down a lot of avenues to attackers.
I agree 100%. I personally think multi-factor is the best control that you can implement. If you don't have it in, it's such a godsend, because of how it's a safety net, right? And then, I wish the word, like the word password is so rooted in our society that the word passphrase, I feel like, doesn't have a chance of breaking through. But really, passphrase is the solution. And a lot of people don't even think that like space, like the space character is a special character. So when you write a sentence, know,
Put in
I love
spaces.
it. Put the spaces in, put a period at the end of a sentence. You know, you've got yourself pretty strong. You know, put a capital letter at the beginning. You know,
Yep. And you know, one of the things, Jason Blanchard, our content and community director, he talks about a company where if somebody calls up help desk and they say, I need to change my password, they will say, okay, so you need help resetting your passphrase. In other words, they never say password. They always use passphrase, and basically trying to rewire the entire conversation, getting away from a word and getting it to a phrase, and kind of changing that thought process takes time. Like, there's no documentation for user acceptance that says password. It all says passphrase. So they're just trying to get away from that and trying to move us away from thinking it's a word like Galapagos, that's our password. It's like, no, we're passphrasing and trying to deal with it. And that's one way, but that takes time. It absolutely takes time.
It really does. And then you begin, like, another challenge I always feel is password reuse. Like, you know, you could have a great password, but then if you're using it, or passphrase, if you're using it everywhere, you know, you kind of back at the start with your problem. But so switching gears, John, you know, Blackhills, you guys do so much for the community, and you yourself kind of run several of these pay what you want, including free, if that's what you can afford, trainings, including breaking into cybersecurity and SOC core skills. And I'll link to some in the description and whatnot, you know, as they come up. And I always share them on LinkedIn with the community and stuff, because I just think it's awesome. But can you just kind of explain, you know, kind of what's your philosophy, or what are the drivers behind these kind of initiatives?
So kind of the driver behind these initiatives, and I've been talking about this in a number of different places over the past couple of weeks. One of the big drivers for this initiative is really looking at, you know, we have problems of diversity in computer security, and you can look at that diversity in a number of different ways. You can talk about it as gender dispersity, sexual orientation dispersity, race dispersity, but ultimately you can also boil it down to like socioeconomic dispersity. A lot of these things boil down to that consistent thing. And when organizations try to deal with this, they do it in kind of these halting, sort of weird ways, right? Just giving you an example, a number of large organizations out in the community, they basically say, we need to get more women or people of color in computer security. How do we go out and get those people? And it's always interesting to me because they always come back to the same levers, where they're like, well, we're going to do scholarships. A scholarship is great, right? Your heart's in the right place. You're trying to do the right thing. And it's awesome for that person that comes in and gets that opportunity. And it's good for all those reasons. But the reality of the situation is it doesn't change anything. It just doesn't. You don't actually make the world a better place by handing out scholarships. You just don't. And that's a harsh thing because, like I said, people's hearts are in the right place. So the problem is gates. Trying to get into computer security, you have gates. And if you're from like a disadvantaged socioeconomic group or a racial group, then you're going to have these gates that have been following you, and mainly it's based around socioeconomic factors. And they can exist for race. They can exist, you know, I mean, you were in South Dakota, right? You know, there's a bunch of people in South Dakota that are incredibly hardworking. They're incredibly bright people, but they have no money at all. So instead of trying to do this thing, we're going to set up, okay, Pacific Islanders, we're going to have a scholarship. We're going to do a scholarship for Native Americans. We're going to do a scholarship for these people and all of these different places. Why not just tear the gates down completely? Just obliterate them. So by doing pay what you can, you're really not really caring about one group or over another group or trying to set up, you know, a handful of people. You're now basically making it so anybody, regardless of where they're coming from a socioeconomic background, now has a way of getting into computer security, getting into that SOC core skills class and learning, you know, TCP/IP, learning operating systems, and then getting into the intro to security class and learning 11 things that you have to know to secure your environment. And then if you want to have fun, cyber deception. And by setting it up that way, some weird things happened, right? The first thing that really was strange that happened was just how many people started taking it. I mean, we're talking anywhere between 5,000, 3,000 to 5,000 people are taking these classes. And that completely changes the way I go about trying to teach that many people. The other thing that floors me is the diversity, where you have people from anywhere from the Philippines to Singapore to the Middle East to Europe, and they're like up at the middle of night their time to take this intro to security class. I mean, I have people from India that barely have a computer that can run this class, that are taking this class because it's a gateway to get them a job in a security operations center, because otherwise they don't have that opportunity. So by doing that and giving people this opportunity without trying to say, well, you qualify in this box or this box or this box, by tearing the gates down, it's amazing to me just how diverse it has been coming in. I have people that are white in Appalachia that are line cooks that love computer security, and they're using this as an opportunity to get out of a job working in a kitchen. And I resonate with that, because I was a cook in kitchens for years in the Blackhills. We have single mothers that are working 2-3 jobs trying to get through this, because this is an entryway for them to get out of working 2 to 3 jobs. And that's all about gates. And I have people oftentimes they'll bring up and they're like, well, we've got things like the SANS Institute and they're really expensive. They're expensive because they're amazing. SANS is the best security training in the world. And I honestly look at a criteria for success for my class is that somebody takes my 2-day class and gets that job that pays for the 6-day classes at like Black Hat or the SANS Institute. Because for me, that's success. Getting people through that door is one of the hardest things. And then they have these opportunities for their careers to move forward. The other thing that's been very weird is the success that we've had already. I mean, we started this mid last year, and I already have people saying, I'm starting my job as a security operations center analyst, specifically because I dropped that I took this class and I took the cyber range, we call it ACE-T cyber range. And I literally got a job because I took a class from you. And for me, from personal perspective, that is probably the greatest success I will ever have in my career, hands down. And these things, it's amazing, the consistency and the drive and doing it. I mean, you know what it's like, because you put out a lot of episodes. It's just like this weird thing. When I started doing free videos and I started doing free webcasts and started doing tech segments with Security Weekly. It's just like, it takes forever. But then there's like this cliff where it just like takes off. And, you got guys like the Cyber Mentor in the industry. I mean, oh my God. I mean, that guy is just killing it. And he's so good, and he's had such a good impact on so many people that, we need more people out there kicking out these channels. And people will be like, well, how am I supposed to get started? You may not resonate with everybody, but you're going to resonate with some people. And it's all about trying to meet people where they're at. The other thing I always try to encourage for people trying to get started in this game is don't try to be a wizard, right? Don't jump into, I wrote a 0-day, I did an exploit, I wrote this really cool Python thing, because people are craving the basics and fundamentals. They desperately need those basics and fundamentals. And the more people we have getting that out to the community, the better we're all going to be at securing our environments.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I've kind of discovered, not even people reaching for the wizard level, it's people are so overwhelmed by the sheer volume. And if you don't have context, you could take like an EJPT certification and then take like SOC skills and then maybe take an audit course. And you're like, there's so much InfoSec and none of it seems to relate to each other. And it's just, what am I doing here? You like someone like Cyber Mentor or some of the work I'm doing, like you're starting to like provide the roadmap, and it's like if you like defending stuff, or if you like this kind of challenge, then this is the career path and the curriculum and the education and stuff that you can follow. And if you're into like breaking stuff and hacking or whatever, Mr. Robot, go this route. So, and I think that goes a long way to keeping people motivated and not frustrating them of feeling confused and basically overwhelmed that they're not good enough. Because I hear that a lot too. Like people like, oh, like I didn't think I was cut out for this, but now I understand that like this is right,
But and that's kind of our making in this industry. And by that I mean like my generation and older. If you look at like my generation plus 5 years, when a lot of us started, in security back in 2000, of course, you had things like DEF CON, you had the DC groups, and there was this elitist garbage attitude of, you're either a noob or you're elite or whatever the hell that was. And a lot of us kind of fed into that, right? Because it was kind of like an abusive system that we came up in, and then we perpetuated that abusive system. And there's a number of us in that community, that kind of in that generation, that really woke up. And even looking at like around 2003 time frame, where we realized that this type of elitist BS wasn't going to work, right? And the other thing a number of us really started learning, some of us learned earlier than others, is that 99% of it was posturing, right? So if you're talking to somebody, they may know something about an exploit, or they may know something about TCP/IP, or they may know something about a very niche area. But whenever you pushed them, they didn't understand the bigger picture in a lot of ways. And I think that being able to step up and admit that you may not know certain things is really a huge first step. And there was a number of us, Nickerson, Kennedy, myself, Paul Isadorian, like a whole bunch of us, we kind of saw what was happening years and years ago on Twitter, where it was like a flame war of the day. And it was constantly posturing about who was a good hacker, what was elite, what wasn't. And we basically were like, like it or not, I'm paraphrasing Nickerson, but it was basically like it or not, y'all are thought leaders, and it's time to step up and start acting like leaders. And it was kind of this huge watershed moment for me. And we were all very drunk at the time, because that's back when I still drank at ShmooCon. And, we kind of started kind of self-regulating and self-policing and trying to tamper that down, because that type of elitist garbage rhetoric, it came from insecurity. And once again, it created gates, because people were coming in and they were intimidated. And that was intentional, because at that time, if we could push you out by intimidating you and making you feel small, it made us feel bigger. And a number of us broke away from that. And we realized that you don't make everyone brighter by trying, or you don't make yourself brighter by dimming others. And there's a number of people in the community that have really taken to that. And they're out there trying to teach. They're out there trying.
There's certifications. There's like projects, labs, hack the box, SOCs, and then there's your traditional higher ed, go get a bachelor's in cyber or computer science and transition that way. What are your thoughts around, the value or the approach, or what people might want to consider when weighing those options?
I don't think it's an issue where you're weighing those options and like, well, which of these do I get to pick? I think you have to more look at it like, which of these things are actually available and accessible to me? And I think that that's one of those problems. We're talking about pay what you can training. People will say, well, why don't you just go get a certification from someplace? It's like, that's out of the league. There's no way. And people can say, well, if it's important to you, you'll find a way to afford it. BS. Like, there's people that's a huge percentage of their yearly income that's not available. So maybe a college degree isn't on the table. And that's okay, right? Because if you're looking at Hack the Box, you're looking at like ACE our cyber range is really affordable for people. It's like $30 a month. That's what we need to keep the freaking lights on to make it work. You have pay what you can training from BHIS. You have pay what you can training from Secure Ideas and other organizations coming online. You have this monstrous amount of YouTube videos. Simply Cyber is contributing to that, right? So you have an ability as an individual with no money to sit down and sink yourself into this community and create a name for yourself. Like I said, if you're looking at Hack the Box or Try Hack This and all these things, I get a resume, and if they've done really well on those cyber ranges, if they've actually been in like the top 5 of the Holiday Hack Challenge from Ed Scotus, and they got a write-up that I can go read, those candidates are right at the top. If you're someone that's getting started and you have something that's available to you, like going into a university, I think you would agree with me. Go to a good university, and I'm hitting DSU because it's DSU. But if you're looking for other universities, look at the CCDC competitions, cyber collegiate defense competitions that are around the country, and see what universities are coming out on top in those competitions. And those will be the universities that you want to seek out if that's a career path that you want to get into. Because I will tell you, Trusted Sec, Secure Ideas, BHIS, Rendition, and Guardians, these firms, like, we watch those challenges, and whenever that shows up on someone's resume that they were on one of those teams, that resume goes to the top. You get these cyber certifications and challenges and things that are free online, those things go on the top. I would also recommend they start a blog. They start writing a blog, not because someone's like they're going to read it and be like, this is brilliant, But if I'm looking at someone's resume and they have proof of their ability to write, if they have a YouTube channel, proof of their ability to present, those are people that I want working for me, hands down, every single time.
Yeah, I always try to encourage people to get a blog and to do that, do the challenges and then document it, and not think like, oh, this has already been documented somewhere, because that's not exactly the reason you're documenting it. You're developing a rich kind of multi-dimensional resume effectively. So ransomware is rampant. Like ransomware is like, there's all sorts of attacks and stuff, but right now ransomware dominates the landscape.
So whenever you're looking at ransomware, I'm going to start with basic ransomware, the two main variants that you hear about all the time. File-based ransomware and entire hard drive locking ransomware. All right. So if you go to Wikipedia or read anything, they always talk about these are the two variants. They're wrong. There's more, but let's just stick with those two. If you look at those two, we actually have technical solutions, and Microsoft has released technical solutions that actually help that. So if you go into Windows 10, you just do a search on ransomware and Windows Defender, there's ransomware protections where you can say these are the folders that need to be protected, and it'll actually back up and protect those folders from encryption. And that's great. The other thing that you can do, if you're looking at ransomware that encrypts your entire hard drive, is look at Ransine. It's by Florian Roth, the guy behind Sigma. So if you're looking for it, I've got his GitHub repository. It's Neo 23x0. It's Neo 23x0, and the name of the tool is Racine. Now, what does this do that actually stops the ransomware that locks your entire hard drive? What it does is it hooks the volume shadow copy process. So if you try to delete a volume shadow copy, it actually stops that delete from deleting the volume shadow copy and kills the process that called the delete. Now, why does this work? One of the things that ransomware does is they try to basically break the ability for you to roll back your operating system to a known good configuration before the ransomware hit. So volume shadow copy is like this restorative, hidden share on your system where Windows can restore itself if something bad happens, which if you have ransomware, if you can roll it back, then it would get rid of the ransomware and, well, life's good. So ransomware tries to destroy that. And as soon as it tries to destroy that volume shadow copy, what it's actually going to do, like I said, is it's going to kill the VS admin process that's trying to run VS admin /delete. And it'll also kill the process that called the VSS admin with the delete command. Now, with that, when you're dealing with that, that actually shuts down a couple of really rampant categories of ransomware. But I said those aren't the only two. If you're looking at the Apple rumors, a third type of ransomware is far more difficult to deal with, where you're dealing with ransomware like Washington, D.C. Police Department is dealing with right now, where the attackers broke in, they stole all kinds of very sensitive documents that could get people killed, and they're asking for money to not release those things public. That's a whole different ransomware. You can set up all the hard drive encryption in the world that you want. You can try to do all of the different protections on all the files that you want. But if the attackers get something sensitive and they threaten to release it publicly, that's a whole nother ransomware that's far more difficult to control with technical kind of protections. So yeah, I think that there are some technical controls for certain types of ransomware, but I also think that a lot of the ransomware authors that are out there are kind of shooting themselves in the foot and killing a golden goose. And the reason why is the more that they do this, the more that the threat is visceral, the more the risk is visceral, the more companies and executives are looking at this and reading on their screens, well, I don't want that to happen to me. And they're starting to increase their cybersecurity support structure in their environment. They're finally getting better because they're either touching the frying pan, learning it's hot, or seeing someone else touch the frying pan and learning it's hot. If I was evil, you'd probably be much better served to just do crypto mining quietly on the systems that you exploit, because that can be the gift that just keeps giving for years in an environment. Once you get a ransomware, that's one and done. You see those companies drastically increase their security budget as soon as they get popped.
The crappy thing with information security is that the better I do my job, the less it looks like I'm doing, right? So it's a paradox, right? So I go ask for more money, but they're like, why do you need money? There's no problem here. And it's yes, I know, because I'm doing it. That's my job.
I think that part of that, and there's another trap that I recommend because it's one of the only ways out, is basically running briefings on similar companies that have been compromised, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
letting them know that this risk is actually real. And it's hard because if you do that, then they're like, well, the risk is real. And when you get hacked, all of a sudden it's like, clearly you failed. And that's really, really, really difficult. The thing that's awesome is we have a number of customers that we work with that get it, right? Like they sink a lot of research, time, effort, and money into security because they know, like we have this one financial firm, if they get hacked, it's the end of them. They just don't exist anymore. Their companies are going to pull, their customers are going to pull all their money out and they're going to go someplace else. So they have very low tolerances for security vulnerabilities. And that's great, right? But those companies are still rare. So you're constantly dealing with the board of directors and the executives trying to figure out what's the least amount of money we can spend and not get hacked. Like that's the ultimate question that they're trying to ask, and it's difficult. I actually spent a lot of time going and talking. Well, before COVID, I would actually go to our customers, and we had set up. It's weird. I did this a number of times. It just kind of became a thing where I go to dinner with the executives, like the CFO, the CIO, CEOs, and a lot of times it's just me and like not the CISO, not the CIO. And I have CEOs, CFOs, and COOs. They sit down and they're like, all right. So our geeks aren't here. Can you please explain to me what PKI is and why that's important? And I will say, like, in your career, the most powerful thing that you can have is the ability to effectively communicate. And that doesn't mean communicate in technical jargon. That means using analogies and trying to set this stuff up. I mean, I've had dinners where I've gone till 3 o'clock in the morning with these guys, and they're just asking me question after question after question after question. And when they get the chance to talk to somebody that can talk tech, but can communicate in a way that makes sense to them without talking down to them, they're just like sponges. And we need to get better at that. And that also goes back to the whole diversity thing, right? The more voices that we have here, the more voices we're going to be able to communicate with effectively. And that's where this is all going. It has to go that way because I may not communicate as well with some people as you would. So having more people to be able to communicate that clicks with a greater diverse group of people is just good for the industry.
Yeah, and I've actually, to that point of communication, something else I encourage people to do that will serve them well is to network, and not technical network, but network with other professionals, engage. COVID has, Discord and Slack were around before, but with COVID, they've really taken off. And, just to plug Blackhills Discord, I don't know if it's open now. I got an invite. Like, I know you guys send out invites all the time, but like Blackhills has an excellent Discord. And you got the channels in there, so it's kind of defining the different talking points. And you don't see a lot of like, like, you're so stupid, you didn't know about that. Like, kind of that elitism that you spoke of earlier. You see much more like, hey, like, I got a question. Like, here's an answer. Here's a resource. Oh, I saw this video. Like, and like kind of this amoebic, on-demand organization, and then split up. And I just see a lot of people making relationships that are paying dividends down the road.
And one of the things that we're working on with that is the people that keep it that way are our nerd herders or our community leaders. We call them nerd herders, and they liked that name quite a bit. But the whole thing about what nerd herders do is they basically kind of keep that community clean. And they keep it going in the right direction. And it takes a while to get up to that point where you're considered a nerd herder. But I think that kind of starts, I'm hoping that starts at the top, because I don't put up with that type of BS of like, you're a noob. That didn't help me in my career. I don't think it helps people. As much as I like the OSCP, their whole catchphrase of try harder, I think is garbage. If you're starting in security and you know nothing, and somebody's like, oh, well, try harder, and like, oh, great, that's the answer. That's what I did. Because some people they don't even have the basics and fundamentals as far as a framework for thinking about this stuff. So we need to make sure that people have that safe space. And our Discord channel is crazy, right? I mean, you can go on some of our channels and there's like 3,000 people live at any given time talking with each other. And that's why whenever we do marketing, we don't call it marketing, we call it content and community, because we're trying to create community in as many different places as we can. And there's some great companies that are following that, and I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, if it is open still, I'll put a link to like an invite or whatever. I'll talk to your community content directors and
get
a
hit
link.
Up Deb and Jason.
Yeah, yep. So people watching this, they can go down into the description and just join the Discord. I'm telling you, the Blackhills one, there's several good ones. I'm a member of several. There's a bunch, but the Blackhills one is exceptional for the content, for the community. Like I didn't even realize that you had moderators basically maintaining the cleanliness of the watering hole, if you will. So that, that just goes further into speaking about the quality of it. Yeah. So John, I guess like do you have any like upcoming projects, or is there any like initiatives or things that you would like people to know about so they can, participate or get up to speed? Are you doing any talks? Yeah.
So the biggest thing is just watch for the pay what you can training on Twitter. I know it's very cliche to be like, I'm Strand JS on Twitter. And you'll see that we run these things once, each class runs once a quarter, and I run 3 in a cycle. So I do intro to SOC, intro to security, and then cyber deception. Then I'll do intro to SOC, intro to security, and cyber deception. I'll do each one 4 times a year. So get involved there. I mean, that's a great place to go. Get in our Discord channel, of course. And the other thing is Wild West Hackin' Fest. We're going to be, I think, the first conference that comes back for realsy in June. And I'm excited about that because right now, whenever it comes to COVID, if you want the vaccine, you can get the vaccine. And we're going to be throwing a party in Reno. And I know my team is all vaccinated. I'm vaccinated. I'm really excited to see people again. But for those of you that are scared, maybe you couldn't get the vaccine for a variety of reasons, or you're still scared of variants, it's going to be virtual as well. So that whole entire thing is going to be live. It's going to be virtual. We're going to have some presenters there, and some will be remote. So we're just trying to meet people where they're at. So check out Wild West Hackin' Fest.
Yeah, and there's not only are there talks, but there's also trainings y'all do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just a whole bevy of stuff, and it's great. John, I know, can you clarify? So I know you guys have the normal Wild West Hackin' Fest, but last year I feel like you had an additional one in San Diego. Are you?
Yep. So the one in Reno is the one that we're doing in lieu of San Diego. There's a lot of additional COVID restrictions in California. And also our hotel, there's a bunch of different things as far as timing and availability. And we moved it to Reno because it's still Wild West. And I love the Tahoe area and the mountains and mountain biking and things like that. So Reno is in lieu of the one that we were going to be doing in 2022 back in San Diego. So there'll be the one in Reno, and then there'll be the one in Deadwood in September. That's coming up.
Yeah, that's the one that I thought was the standard one. Yeah.
Yep. And we're getting Dave Kennedy is coming out. He's going to bring his DeLorean. We're doing a Back to the Future theme. We're going to call it Hack to the Future.
Nice.
So we're going to have a lot of fun with it.
That's great. So is the plan to do like Deadwood year 1 and then San Diego year 2 and then Deadwood year 3, or is it to have 2 conferences a year?
We're going to start with 2 a year. And we're talking about trying to maybe do something in Orlando because we have a lot of friends in Orlando and a lot of employees.
Yeah, I was hoping an East Coast edition would occur. Yeah.
Yeah. My goal is I would like to get to the point where we're going worldwide. Like we have one in Europe and do one in Australia, one in Orlando, one in DC, one in San Diego, and one back home in Deadwood. But that takes time, right? I mean, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, but we got a staff that can handle it. And it takes time to get there, but we're going to get there, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
On behalf of the whole community, thank you for all that you do, and really you are personified of Blackhills information security. So we sincerely appreciate it, and everybody's going to go check out all your stuff as soon as they're done with this podcast. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.